Hello, my name is Ryder Searle, and today I will be talking about my teacher interview reflection. And so the case study students that I have, I'm going to just use the names Joey and Timmy, and for the teacher, I am just going to use the name Sally. So Joey and Timmy, they are third grade students, and they both have developmental delays. And so Joey, he functions at about a kindergarten level, and he has a lower IQ than on average, and he just kind of has more like emotional needs. He's not a super big behavior problem, but he can just kind of be very emotional. And so Timmy, he can be a little more meaner and a little more behavioral issues. He has mild academic struggles. Um, he has behavior problems and will target other students who are weaker than him. He kind of notices that and will target them. So he'll target students like Joey. And he can't follow three-step directions very well. You kind of have to give him one task at a time. And so that is going to lead me into some different triggers for them both. So I'm going to start with triggers for Joey. So one trigger for Joey is sometimes he'll see two kids giggling to each other, and he'll think that they are talking about him. And so he'll get really upset and get mad at them. And this is just kind of a misunderstanding, because most of the time, the kids will just be laughing or giggling or whispering to each other about, whatever, puppies or whatever they're talking about. And so since he's functioning at a kindergarten level, he just doesn't necessarily understand kids his own age. And so that can be very frustrating and can trigger some bad behavior. He can become very frustrated with academics. His IQ is not low enough for him to qualify for modified standards, and so he still has to hit the standards of a third grader, and so that can be very frustrating for him. And if the teacher does not work with him first, he can get very defeated. The teacher, he can get defeated because if the teacher doesn't come over to him, he just doesn't know how to do the problem, and he'll kind of just like shut down and put his head on the table. And another trigger for him is Timmy picking on him. Now I am going to talk about some triggers for Timmy. So one of the triggers for Timmy is when he gets caught, he'll shut down. He can get caught, being quite mean to some students, and when he gets in trouble, he'll just completely shut down. He won't respond to anyone, the principal, the teacher, other students. He just is done, and he gets very upset. Also, another thing is doing the problem wrong. Sometimes he'll get on the problem really quick, but if the teacher's like, "Oh, Timmy, you're not doing that right," he'll just get all mad, crumple up his paper, and throw it away. Another trigger, I think, is that he wants attention. Just through the observation of him, he really wants attention. I'm going to explain this later, but he has a single mom, and so I don't think he gets a ton of attention at home and or from his friends, and so I think a lot of the reason why he acts out and is to get attention from others. And also another trigger is making a small problem into a bigger problem. And so sometimes, a small problem could be like, he didn't do the problem quite right. Well, that's a small problem, but he makes it into a bigger problem by just getting all upset and throwing his paper and just getting completely shut down. So that will lead me into the reinforcers for them both. So I'm going to start with Joey. So one of the helpful reinforcers for Joey is role playing. So if he sees two whispering students, the teacher will have them like kind of whisper to each other, and then he will have to ask them like, "What are you whispering about?" and not get all upset and assume that they're talking about Joey, but he can like actually just ask them and engage himself in a polite and respectful way. And most of the time, this is very helpful for him because he realizes like, "Oh, I'm misunderstanding them when we're whispering to each other." I think another one is reinforcer is just the discussion around big problems and small problems. Is just like good to help because then they can decipher between the two if it's a big problem or a small problem. And sometimes the teacher will give him other tasks while waiting. For Joey, if the teacher doesn't get to him right away, he'll shut down. So the teacher will give him other tasks to keep him busy before the teacher can get to him. And for Joey, he has spots in the room where he can go to calm down. So when he gets really upset, he goes to these spots, and he's allowed to go to these spots just to calm down and to re-engage with the class. And another helpful reinforcer for Joey is breaks in the day. Sometimes when he gets really upset, he is just done and he is out. And so whenever there's a break in the day, like lunch or recess, this kind of pulls him out of his funk. So this leads me into some helpful reinforcers for Timmy. So some helpful reinforcers for Timmy is that he visits with a psychologist, a school psychologist, twice a week, and they kind of go over their behavior plan and different things to help him improve his behavior. He has a behavior chart, so if he can go, an example would be if he can go 4 days without an infraction, then he would get a reward, and these rewards are very effective reinforcers for helping Timmy. So some of these rewards would be like teacher with lunch with the teacher, lunch with the gym teacher, extra recess, things like that, because he really likes to have that good attention from older people. He's also an artist, and so he might get some extra time just to draw and to do art, and so that's super helpful. The sticker charts are super helpful. Like if he can get 16 stickers, then maybe he can pick a reward out of the school treasure box or something like that. So this will take me into things that don't work. So things that don't work for Timmy is consequences. This is kind of very similar for Joey. When you give Timmy a consequence, he shuts down, he sits under the coat rack, he hides his face, and he'll sometimes like run out of the room and hide. And so a lot of the times consequences are really not good. And I think the teacher was very on it, and she like reiterated that some days are better than others, and like what works one day doesn't always work the next, so you kind of have to be very flexible and patient with the students. So some things that do not work for Joey as well as consequences. Consequences usually end up in tears, and he'll get to a point where he's so upset that he just can't respond, and so he has to go to those calming places, but still like he's just he's out, he can't respond. And a lot of the time, if you reintroduce him back to the class too soon, that doesn't work either. So you really have to give him some time alone just to really like decompress and get back on track. So now I'm going to talk about the parent involvement for both of them. So the parent involvement for Timmy, like I said above, he has a single mom. So she is just not very involved because she works all the time. She doesn't really have time. And so she can't be involved very often like with the school, so she can't like help out in the school with things like that, and she doesn't have a ton of time to help out at home to reinforce Timmy on good behavior. And so this can just be very hard for Timmy because he just doesn't have a lot of support in that area. And on the flip side of that, the parent involvement for Joey, his parents are very involved. They're very helpful. They bend over backwards for him. She didn't go into too much detail about like exactly what they do, but they're at the school, they help out whenever they can, and they do a lot of stuff at home, reinforcing things. And you can kind of just tell Joey is a little bit, he's a little more well behaved. He just can be very emotional, and Timmy can just he's not super well behaved, and I think a lot of it stems from his wanting attention. So now I'm going to talk about some different positive behavior strategies that Miss Sally will implement, and other teachers will implement in their school. And so one of them is that they go over the expectations at the beginning of the year and after breaks and after long weekends. So these expectations just reiterate in the minds of the students what is expected of them, what they're required to do, what they're supposed to do, what the procedures are, for whatever it is, going to the bathroom, sharpening your pencil, things like that. They do a lot of restorative justice, and so they'll meet 3 times a week, and they will just have these meetings basically where they can talk about how to restore relationships with one another and how to basically just work with peers better. Miss Sally said that Timmy and Joey's class is very emotional, and there's a lot of emotions in it, and so they just need a lot of time just to kind of work through those things. They have a psychologist at the school. They have a speech and language pathologist that comes 4 times a week, which is a lot more than other schools in the Jeffco area. They have counselors, sped teachers, and a lot of teacher and parent resources to help with positive behavior. As I've stated above, the sticker charts are super beneficial, especially for the kids who are having more problem behavior, because this kind of focuses them on like what they need to be doing so that they can, they'll get a reward and they can focus on what is required of them. Miss Sally goes over different time management strategies. So whenever they're working by themselves, how to work well so that they can finish their assignment by the end of class. And she does a lot with like independent practice with less prompts. So meaning like where she doesn't have to ask them 4 or 5 times to get to work. But if they can do it, in less than 4, then maybe they'll get a sticker for their sticker chart. So this takes me finally into how I will apply this. And so I think it was super beneficial talking to Miss Sally and observing the kids. I think some things that I'm going to use to apply this is that no kid is the same. So every kid is different and every day is different. And so you have to be very patient with the students and just patient with how they're acting. Patient with consequences, not getting super mad and blowing up on them, because that's not helpful. So I think patience is huge, being very patient and just being like, okay, it's okay, and just keep being, working to be creative and flexible. Right here, I have that bullet point is just, I think being flexible is huge and creative as far as, different rewards go and different consequences for the students. And just really like working with them and always keeping an open mind to what will work and what won't work, and trying to figure out the best plan and practice for positive behavior. I think solid expectations are big. I think people respond really well to expectations. So setting high expectations but not out of reach, I think is really key, because then they can focus on that. I think getting help from others, other teachers, other special education teachers, getting help from the parents, getting them involved, I think is really big, because teachers have a huge impact on students, but their parents have even more of an impact. So getting them involved, I think, is really helpful, and just reaching out and getting help, because this fight we can't do alone, and it's not meant for us to do alone. And I think solid classroom management is big, having those rules and those procedures set in place so that students know what is expected of them. Like they know exactly what they're supposed to do when they have to use the restroom or sharpen their pencil, or when they're supposed to work on their homework or an assignment, things like that. And finally, I think consequences and rewards, I think, we have to be, as teachers, have to be careful about when to give consequences, and I think consequences are good and they should be done. But a lot of the time, I think rewards are really big too, because Romans 5:20 talks about how the law came in to increase the sin, and so a lot of the time when you focus on what a child shouldn't be doing and being like, don't do this, don't do that, they immediately think of that thing and they want to do it. And so I think when you can focus on what they should be doing and like rewarding them for doing the right thing, I think that can be big, because it just reinforces in their mind that, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And instead of focusing on the don'ts, you can focus on the do's and provide rewards for them. So thank you. That is my presentation. Here's my reference page. Thank you all for listening. I hope you all have a great day.